Initially, Donald Trump was only pulling out 50 US troops from Syria. Initially, just 50. But because of the chaos that pulling out 50 has created, he's now pulling out the other 950 as soon as he can. To avoid being caught in the crossfire, the president says. A crossfire that his initial policy created and a crossfire that his current policy will make much worse. Now, don't get me wrong, this is not the ABC and I'm no professional Trump hater. Broadly speaking, I'm a supporter of this president who gets stuff done, stuff that he promised at the election. It's a rare thing these days for any politician to match the talk with action, but this he has done. Boosting defence, cutting red tape, cutting tax, growing the economy, growing jobs, getting out of the Paris Climate Treaty because he said it's a bad deal for the United States, and moving the US Embassy to Jerusalem. When he says he will do all of that and actually does it, he deserves praise and he gets it from me. But cutting off America's sole effective local ally in the fight against Islamic State is a blunder of the highest order. And there's no point trying to pretend otherwise. I said it last week, I said it immediately as it happened, and here we are now. Already there's been a heavy human cost following Trump's decision to withdraw from the region, with more than 100,000 displaced people streaming away from the invading Turkish military. But down the track, Russia and Iran too will be boosted by the US withdrawal, and in the West, we can't trust either. More of a concern to me is the reality that Islamic State prisoners almost certainly will be released. And there's thousands under lock and key who won't be for much longer. And with more terrorists in circulation, a new wave of local terror seems more likely now, but also in Europe, in London, Paris, and all the hotspots we've seen over recent years, all because the president acted before he thought, and it would appear acted against the advice of experts, military advisors, even his strongest congressional allies. But this isn't the worst of it. It's just the start of a dire series of changes. President Obama was rightly criticised for drawing what he called a red line in the sand against Syria using chemical weapons, and then doing nothing when the Syrian dictator duly crossed that line. That was bad, making a threat and not carrying it out. But what Trump has done is even worse. He hasn't just failed to punish an enemy, he's actually betrayed a friend. For Trump, this is his red line moment. He hasn't just failed the test of international leadership through inaction. Worse still, he's failed it by deliberately doing what he should have known would have been catastrophic, not just for the unfortunate Kurds, but for America's global prestige. It's bad enough that the Kurds have been blatantly and horribly let down. But what does this say to every other US ally, including Australia? Now, at one level, of course, Trump's insistence on putting America first over its allies, I can understand. It means less US blood and treasure spent. But the kind of isolationism that once made sense is impossible to maintain in today's global village. The bin Laden terror network, for instance, was able to inflict more direct damage on the US on September 11 than one of the world's most sophisticated countries, Germany, was able to inflict throughout the entire war 75 years ago. That's why withdrawing the largely token force from Syria is so seismic. And as long as the US was there, other countries had to tread much more carefully. Now there's no one to prevent terrorism against our people and genocide against their own. And here at home, the idea pushed around by Christina Keneally, the most subpar frontbencher I've seen in 16 years of federal politics, and that's saying something. Her idea that we risk Australian lives to bring home the women and children of Islamic State is both mad and out of touch. I tell you what, Christina, it is mad because these women left Australia knowing precisely that in doing so they were entering a war zone. They offered themselves up to Islamic State fighters as their war prize to men that most of these women had never met, so they could get pregnant and bear the cubs of the caliphate. And it's mad because any thought that as women they're somehow innocent of any suspicion of terrorist activity just shows how out of depth you really are. My experience with Islamist terrorism is that as Western women, their internet skills and English language proficiency would have been highly prized because recruiting vulnerable young Westerners to the Islamic State cause online, well, that was core terrorism business. But most of all, Christina Keneally, you're just out of touch. You are completely and utterly out of touch with ordinary Australians who might feel sorry for the infants and younger children, but would likely think these Islamic State women, Australians or not, can simply just rot in hell.